That's my job, provide that access.
Well, we appreciate you coming along. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And don't forget to ask about the poodle skirt.
That's right.
The greater Bemidji area that'll guide our development into the future.
Members, county commissioners, they're appointed by their respective bodies.
Honey, or it can be local, you and I creating a business that then we take to a local perspective.
If you have a question, call and ask, we'll help you.
Nobody knows about it, and it's
Well, the word's out now. Word's out now.
Your entire operation, how to bring people in. So let's get involved. Economic development is one of the most important tasks we have.
It is. It is.
It's great to hear about.
Thanks again.
Mr. President.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Steve.
It's been a pleasure, Louis.
Good evening. I'm Luke Crenshaw at 6:30 on Wednesday evening, and thanks to Upstream TV, we're back once again with Inside Bemidji, where we showcase people and organizations who are working to make our community an even better place. Tonight we're going to talk about county government, and I'm pleased to be here with Jim Lucachick, District 5 County Commissioner. Jim, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Luke.
It's been a year since we did this last time, and we'll hear what changes and what's happened in the
I just started
county.
my second term of 4 years as county commissioner, did 4 years, and just got going again this last year. I was seated on the budget committee, so we'll get into that, talking about a little bit of that tonight, try to talk general terms and try to talk big ideas about how budget works and how the budget works in the county. I'm originally from International Falls. My mom was a school teacher. My dad was a paper maker at Boise Cascade. My mom checked all of my papers for English and made sure that it was proper. My dad taught me how to...
I wish my mom had.
Well, that's why you know Chinese.
Not much.
My dad dragged me down to the old homestead all the time, so I spent a lot of time outside putting up some hay and hanging around in the woods trying to shoot a deer and doing all that stuff. So
How far is International Falls from here? I know it's
110
up there,
miles northeast.
and it's always colder than Bemidji.
Yeah, they say
believe it
that,
or
but
not,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So anyway, how long have you been in Bemidji, Jim?
Moved here in 1989. Started my own architecture business, self-employed, small architecture shop. We do a wide range of things, from houses to log homes to all of that sort of thing. But how I got into the county government thing was my mom had a great saying all the time is, either put up or shut up, and I wasn't able to shut up. So I found myself talking.
Okay.
I found myself talking to a lot of people about issues and topics and what was going on with county government, and I think there's a lot of mystery about how the budget works and how votes work and how things get done. And you know, I just really encourage people to try to get involved with county government and figure out how to make a change and how to affect some kind of a motion of what is going. That there's so much talk about the silent majority that people feel that,
You think maybe they're too silent?
yeah, and that government's not doing what the majority really wants. And I think it's because they just don't give a dang. They're not going to meetings, they're not getting involved, they're not jumping in, they're not making their voice heard. So
Well, you talk about it being a mystery. We're going to try to roll back some of that mystery around county government tonight. Before we leave you and your business, though, you live now in Northern Township, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I just read in the byline something about you opening a new office. Tell us a little bit about it.
in International Falls,
Okay.
back in the good old
Home.
yeah, in my home country. My first job as a high school draftsman was in June of 1977. I worked for a gentleman by the name of Jim Cowgill. He's been running an architecture shop in International Falls for 30 plus years. He's just since retired to Florida. He called all his contacts up there and said,
Timing.
call Jim, he'll take care of you. He has a small office up there that in a building that he owns. He made me a great deal, so I'm popping up there every 2-3 times a month. It's been really fun because I know everybody there. Everybody knows me.
We're not gonna lose you to International Falls.
No. It's
All
just,
right.
it's just a great diversification for my business, and it
Good.
gives me an opportunity to do a little bit of work up there, and I have been involved up there in the past 4 or 5 years. They remodeled the old school up there, similar to the school in Bemidji, the old high school.
Which we lost.
Yeah, we lost it in Bemidji, but I Falls was able to hang on to it, and they turned that into their community center, and they're going gangbusters. We
Oh,
put
good for them.
a commercial kitchen in there, and we did a number of things, and that's really become the center of the community up there. So I like International Falls. My home is Bemidji, but where I'm from is
Well,
is
where,
there.
where everyone's from is important to them.
Yep.
That's a good story. Well, I hope that works out for you. I want to go right out of that and we talked about this a small amount last time, and I just wanted kind of an update on it, and that's what I wrote down in my note as life as a county commissioner. You know, I had Dave Hengel here. We had a great conversation just last week about development, and Dave said, oh yeah, Jim's on my board of directors, and I know you just came right from some kind of meeting out at the airport, so I presume you're involved in that. Tell me about commissioners in general and what kind of things they're doing, and then yourself in particular.
Well, the definition of a county commissioner is to manage the budget, manage the affairs of the county, and there are a number of legal, for lack of a better word, documents and associations, joint powers agreements that are developed that manage county taxpayers' dollars. So, for example, I sit on approximately 14 committees.
14.
And of those 14, there's probably 9 or 10 that are active on a monthly basis. So in any course of a week, you may have a Monday night meeting, Tuesday afternoon board session at the county board, a Wednesday evening like tonight is the airport authority, Thursday night it could be the HRDC commission, and Friday morning could be the Greater Bemidji Development. So it used to be Joint Economic Development, but it's now called the Greater Bemidji.
Right,
So
right.
on my worst week, that's a week where the third week of the month, it seems like everything gets stacked up onto that. So a lot of committees. I try to get involved with the right number of committees to make sure that you stay in touch with constituents. Every committee you go to, there's folks there that are on that committee. Tomorrow night I have a Parks Trails Advisory Commission. So we'll be talking about management of the county lands, the timber industry, where we're gonna build some new park shelters, where we're gonna build some new vault toilets, where we're gonna, we get right down to the nitty gritty and really deal with how you get things done. And you have a budget.
It's a big time commitment, though.
Yes, it's a big time commitment, and it really requires someone that has a flexible schedule. I'm lucky enough that my business, I can do it at 4 in the morning, I can do it at 7 o'clock at night, most of the things. Meetings with the public I need to make when they're available, but
Yeah,
if
right.
I have some county time that I need to take off during the day, if I miss 2 hours, I really try hard then to make sure that I'm in at 6 in the morning and get some work done from 6 to 8 to make up for that 2 hours that I'm gonna be away during the
As you
day.
said, you can work in different segments
Right.
of the day.
But I'm a businessman, so you still have to make sure that the ends meet, and that at the end of the week, you got 40 hours worth of time that you put into your business, or your business isn't gonna be there.
Now, are all the commissioners doing the same kind of things?
No, some of them do a lot more.
Okay.
Some of the other commissioners are heavily involved in the Association of Minnesota Counties, which is a statewide association of all of the counties, and it's based down in the cities. They try to touch base with the legislature a lot, and they try to make sure that the county issues that are similar from county to county get addressed at a legislative level.
Now, do people, excuse me for interrupting, but that's an interesting one. So they're going down to the cities regularly?
Yes, they travel down on a weekly basis.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, how about the administration? Do they get involved to help in things like that?
Yes, very much so. The county administrator is very involved in Association of Minnesota Counties. Because of my time commitments, I am not involved in that organization. Not good or not bad, it's
You
just,
can't do everything.
right,
like you
can't
said.
do everything, so.
Yeah, but there's only 5 of you.
Right.
Is that by statute? Is that a good number? Why is it?
Well,
With all this going on, I mean.
yeah, and I always wonder about county commissioners down in the metro area where they're dealing with, 1 million population in their county. You divvy out to 7 county commissioners, divide 7 into 1 million, that's quite a few folks that you're representing.
Yes.
Beltrami County has 44,000 people. Divide that by 5 commissioners, each of us represent about 9,000 constituents. I sat across the table down in Minneapolis with one of the metro county commissioners, and it was a full-time position. They worked all the time at being a county commissioner,
Well, that's hard to do.
dealing with roads and dealing with
That's hard to do.
dealing with
do
all of
anything
that.
else
Yeah.
in your life. Well, I guess the problem I have in my mind is you're either retired or you can't, so you end up with all like retirees on there, don't you?
Well, and see, that's what comes back to what I was talking about earlier about that silent majority, that we gotta figure out how to not classify the local government into what you just said. In order to have, in order to run for county government, you gotta be retired or don't have anything else going on in your day. I'm
Or
trying
a flexible job.
right, but
or-
I'm trying to show that as a business person, and
Yeah.
I do say that the counties, they're really good, and they work with me as much as possible. For example, the county retreat / strategic planning session that we just had. They were nice enough to make it at 7 in the morning until 11 in the morning to get 4 hours in the first day, or the second day. And the first day was 4 o'clock in the afternoon to 8 o'clock in the evening. So it was a total of 4 hours of time out of my regular work day and 4 hours on off time. So,
But you got to do something both days.
Right,
And keep things moving.
yeah, exactly. So,
Well, it
so
sounds
they
like
are-
a heck of a load, and it sounds like you gotta really be, you gotta really wanna do it.
yeah. And, we still really encourage folks to get involved, but, it's, Lou, you spent quite a bit of time just for this interview, taking a look at the county website, looking at the budget, looking at all of the information that's out
And
there.
that's just to have a conversation.
Yeah, and that's just so that you have,
It's not getting in depth enough to be able to have an opinion on a decision, which
Right.
would take even more study.
there are 340 county employees. That's what the county government employs right now, is 340 people. And that's every department from natural resource management, the timber and all of that, the highway department, the health and human services, that's a lot of folks. It's a $60 million a year budget.
Right, I noticed that.
It's a $60 million a year corporation
Yes,
that you're
it
running.
is, it
So
is.
you have a county administrator, that's the CEO, so to speak. You have the 5 county commissioners that are the board of directors that make all of the policy. You have approximately 40 department heads that deal directly with the 5 county commissioners. Those are all the department heads that come out of the assessors and the highway department and all of the different departments. And we try to make sure that we stay in touch with those key department heads to make sure that when we're making policy, we're doing it in
Informed way.
the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, that's right, Jim. That was what struck me, and you're right. I read some of the budgets for the last couple of years, which are pretty massive documents, and they're more than a budget. They're also like planning documents. By the way, I'll interrupt you to talk about this since you brought it up. Jim's right. In getting ready for this, if you go online and look at the Beltrami County budget, you'll bring up a very interesting document. It's hundreds of pages long, but it's far beyond the financials and the budget and the plan. It goes into planning, and it goes into the strategic objectives. In fact, maybe we'll get into some of it later here, because I did make a few notes. But, if you want to know what your government is doing, it's really a remarkable document, and I'd point you to have a look at it.
And that brings up another kind of pertinent topic of the difference between township government, city government, county government, state government, and then ultimately federal government. So if you think about it, you live in a township, and by the way, I'm sorry, Lou, I live in Turtle Lake Township.
Oh, you do?
I'm right close to the border of Northern Township. My district is Northern Township,
Okay.
and then right north of that is Turtle Lake
Since I
Township.
knew you represented me in Northern, I kind of presumed you lived there.
So those are the two townships
Who
that I
designed
live
your house for you, Jim? I just threw that in to
Yeah.
see if you were still.
Jim Cowgill did. No, he did. So the overlap is, you live in a township
Yep,
that's next to a city,
right.
and you're affected by that city government. The city and the township is in the county. The county is within a legislative district in the state, and the state legislative district is within a federal congressional district. So, before I got involved in county government, it was really unclear in my head on how all that worked.
Yeah.
What is township
Yeah.
government? And I try to simplify it, and I use it in regards to our roads. Your driveway is your private driveway. You're the only one that drives on that. That goes out to a road, usually a township road, that gets you out of your township, to a county road that gets you into the city, and that county road then gets you to a state highway that brings you down to Minneapolis, that jumps on a federal throughway. So the county government kind of works the same way. Is the townships are represented with township supervisors. Each of the cities that were within a county have city council people, and then each of the counties have 5 or 7 commissioners throughout the state. So it's a really interesting progression, and at a county level, we try really hard not to step on any of those toes. We try to let the township folks take care of their road gravel and their grading and all of those issues. We try to make sure that the city is, they take care of their city issues, and then the county is the big picture around the cities and each of those townships.
But there is some leveraging, which I think works really well. I was talking to Kay Murphy, the city clerk, and she was telling me that the synergy works really well with the county in that you guys both work on the library.
Yep.
And you both work with the county attorney service. In other words, the city leverages these county resources.
Yep.
And the the IT, the
Computer information.
computer information technology stuff. So there, even though you guys are separate, there is some leveraging to save costs for everybody.
Right, and we're trying to do that more and more. There's no reason that the city needs to have a big bank of servers and computer servers when the servers that are running the county and dealing with the same state agencies that the city may have to deal with, we can get together and partner up on that. And we have an MIS department at the county government that helps. I think they're up to about 2 or 3 different organizations that they're
Right.
using their expertise to help them out. That way you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
That's smart money. And the airport is also, and I'm very unclear on this, but the county, and isn't some other government entity also involved in the airport? Or is that just a county?
It's right now it's more when they develop the airport authority, it's a separate taxing district. So if you look at your property taxes, you'll see there's a levy for township government, there's a levy for county, there's a levy for ISD school district, there's a levy for HRDC, there's a levy for the airport, and basically it's that big pool of money that is generated by tax levy, and then what we have to do as a township officer, a county officer, a city officer, is we need to divvy that budget up and make sure we got our township roads gravelled, our county roads blacktopped, our city services taken care of. It's splitting that whole tax pot into divvied up pieces to make sure that we all have, as a community, have the services that we want. We want to be able to get on a road, drive to town, buy some groceries, and drive home. And when you talk to people, you know, some of the big issues they always talk about, especially up in this part of the country, is, and this is a big old worn out statement, but I like using them because it's true: tall trees, clean water, and roads to get around. You know, those three topics seem to always come to the top. They always float to the surface. And a big discussion in Beltrami County right now is similar to the nation. Our roads are really getting to a point where we need to do something with them.
Deteriorating infrastructure.
Yeah.
And of course, after this winter, there's some amazing potholes out there.
Right.
That's for sure.
So the road discussion, you know, our federal government's going to have that road discussion on a national level. Some of those roads were built, most of them were built in like the 60s and all that big work era.
Well, certainly the big interstates, right? They
Yeah.
used to call it the Eisenhower, this is before you were around, they call it the Eisenhower Transportation Network or something
Right.
like that. Because he was the one that,
He said, I want to
I
have
want to have it.
freeways going from coast to coast
Yeah, that's right.
to make sure that people can get out and see all of our national parks and stay within the United States to travel. And
You know, Hitler had them. And we learned during the war how effective they were the hard way.
right,
And
transportation was a key.
thank God we haven't had to use them in a war, but they're pretty darn handy for scooting around there.
Right. And, you know, Lou, we talked earlier about, you know, the MnDOT going price these days, and this one always brings a little gasp. The going price on a mile of highway is $1 million a mile. So if you're gonna,
Right, I heard that number.
if you're gonna do a realignment and rebuild, that's the most destructive kind of a redo that you need to do. If you take an old road that's got a lot of curves in it and you straighten it out, you flatten it out, you get your sight lines better, those bids are coming in at 5 miles are right around 5.2 million, 4.9 million, so $1 million a mile to rebuild roads. So the next thing that I say, and a lot of folks don't like it, is in our foreseeable future, we're gonna have some roads that you're gonna drive down that used to be blacktop and is now gravel.
Just because the cost is.
Because the cost has gotten to the point where our tax
Just too
base,
high.
we just don't
Can't
have.
maintain them all.
We can't maintain them all, because, you know, as you and I were growing up, you never drove down a road that was blacktop and turned into gravel.
No, I've never seen that ever.
It was always gravel
No, I've never seen it.
that turned into blacktop.
Right, and then
Yeah.
turned into a wide, and then on and on, yeah.
And, you know, there are folks that are gonna argue with me on those points, but I still say that we need to rethink how we move around as Americans, and we need to go back to that feeder, and you may have to, instead of just beelining right to town, you might have to backtrack a little bit. You might have to go north a half a mile and catch a county road that goes over to a major feeder and down, rather than always, it seems like, you're always just going right straight to town and you hope you're always on blacktop.
Well, you know, when it comes to costs and the fact that the tax base is finite and the expectations are unlimited, something's always going to have to be done. I was going to ask you a little bit ago, and I didn't mean to diverge, but now it's come right back in my mind. You know, you were talking about these layers of government. Sometimes I wonder about the counties. You know, the counties were drawn out. Well, the ones in Indiana and Illinois are like graph paper. You know,
Right.
they were what's called sectioned, and
Yeah.
up here, I guess, too.
And you know why they were done that way? Is that every county seat was within a wagon's ride from the
Correct.
homestead
Correct.
into the county
And
seat.
see, I did not know that,
Yeah.
but that's kind of my question. You know, when we talk about Bemidji now as a regional center, so there's 100,000 people living around Bemidji using it.
That's a pretty wide area, yep.
That is a wide area.
And then,
But anyway, the county lines cut it. You see, when you say there's 44,000 in Beltrami County, but Bemidji's kind of on the edge, and
Yeah.
you know, so it's like you talk about the federal districts, they cut right, I mean, they're right, like on the other side of the lake.
Yeah.
You know, and so sometimes I wonder how these 1800s designations and lines really serve us today, but how would you ever have any mechanism for doing anything about it?
Right.
Because I can see a county kind of centered on the population up here.
Well, if you use that same methodology, there should be a county seat within a reasonable drive now in a car, in an automobile, from the furthest point in that county. You know, so if they went back and, you know, you look at southern Minnesota, and it is all just, it's gridded right out. It's all a north, south, east, west grid, and those counties are very small population-wise, and there's a county seat in every one of those because it was based on that old wagon mentality. And there are some state legislators that have proposed to get rid of 87 counties in Minnesota.
Okay.
We don't need 87 counties. We don't need 87 central, 87 little central points of county government divvying things out. Not just because I'm a county commissioner, but explain how we're going to divvy out services.
Yeah, I understand.
And deal with all of that.
It ain't going to be easy to deal with that, and
It's
we won't
not-
solve it tonight.
Yeah,
But
and it's not
an
easy
interesting
at
question.
it's not easy at Beltrami County level. You know, we're dealing with a $60 million budget. There's a lot of issues to deal with.
Let's dive into that budget, but first I want to say, for people who just joined us, thank you. My name is Lou Crenshaw. Every Wednesday at 6:30, we have our show here thanks to Upstream TV. We call it Inside Bemidji, and we try to showcase people and organizations who are working to make our community an even better place. Tonight, as you've probably heard, we're talking about county government, and we're pleased and lucky to have Jim Lucachick, our District 5 County Commissioner, here. And I hope you join us because, as Jim said, all of these layers of government can be a bit mysterious. Well, tonight we're going to try and get some of the mystery out of the county.
I must have done okay because you asked me back, Lou.
I did. We did this a year ago. It was fun. Let's talk about the budget. I read it. Oh, I got to tell you a funny story. So I read the budget, Jim, and it's 221 pages long.
That's a stimulating document, isn't it?
It is. And well, like I said earlier, though, it's really more than a budget. It's a planning document. It's a, you know, what all of the departments are doing and working on and all their objectives. But just for the fun of it, I got on the internet and I looked up, I said, okay, who's a really big dog? General Electric. So I looked up GE.
What was their budget?
Well, their revenues are just short of $150 billion a year.
Okay.
They did theirs at 140 pages. I just thought you'd enjoy that.
Yeah, I might be able to use that at the next county board meeting. Matter of
Just
fact, I
for
probably will use that at the next county board meeting.
It was interesting to me that the 2012 county budget was balanced.
Yep.
Revenues and expenditures. But it says the 2013 Beltrami County budget is balanced, but only because of the board's authorization to use fund reserves.
Yep.
And before you jump in, I'll explain it said, and it looked like about a $500,000 deficit. So on a $60 million budget, on a percentage wise, that's a pretty, close miss.
Acceptable.
Yeah, that's acceptable. But they went on to say, okay, they got a plan to deal with it. It said they're going to develop and recommend a financial plan that'll get the budget balanced. And the target is to do that by 2017. But that means they'll have a 4-year plan, and over that time, they're going to use their reserves, and it's not going to take a lot, like I said, if they're winning $500,000. And so they're going to try between now and 2017 to, like they did this year, use some of their reserves and get themselves back in balance. And I guess, Jim, and I do want you to comment on this, but my last one from the written document is, everyone seems to be very concerned, of course, about what the state's going to do, because the state are not in balance. They're in pretty serious deficit, and there's a lot of scrambling, I guess, to do something about that, which is good. But meanwhile, we get quite a lot of money transferred to us from the state.
Yep.
In fact, that's probably our biggest source of revenue. It's far higher than our tax
Yes.
collections. And so if that gets disrupted, changed, or in a particular cut, then our balancing act on our budget will be even more difficult.
Right. And,
So
and not
fill us
to,
in on all of
and
that.
not to try to baffle anybody with numbers, because it's easy to just sit down and look at a big string of numbers and keep throwing them out there. But the big picture is, I've tried to say it a couple of times, you know, we're basically running a $60 million corporation in Beltrami County.
Right, and
Of
the
that-
city's running it very well, by the way.
Yeah, and of that 60 million, 17 million is basically the levy. That's our tax levy. That's what we're getting from you folks. So each year, we're basically doing that 17 million. So the remainder of the difference between 60 and 17, that 43 is coming from the state, local government aid, and, you know, all those different sources that are
Right.
grants and aids and all of that sort of thing. The good news about Beltrami County, and I've been sharing this with a number of different organizations, is that over the years, the Beltrami County Board has been prudent, and in my humble opinion, maybe a little too prudent, because we've built up approximately, give or take a $500,000, $40 million in reserves. And there are 7 reserves accounts that are, some are restricted, some are not restricted, but
Well,
basically.
that's good news.
Yeah, but basically you have $40 million that are sitting in reserves. Now, the state of Minnesota recommends, there is no requirement for what you're supposed to keep in your reserves. So Beltrami County Board right now, we're having some really good discussions about that. What should you have in reserves, you know? Liken it to your,
Well, if you're a $60 million business and you've got 40 million reserves, you don't have a year's worth of, not that you need it, but you know.
But in other-
should your revenue plunge, I don't have an answer, I'm just thinking out loud.
in other counties, we are in very good condition.
That's
okay?
good news.
So the state recommends that you would keep about a 3-month operating reserve. That's what they recommend is,
Okay.
as a county
And
government,
you've got roughly 8 months.
and the last audit said we have 9.5. Okay. So what I've been trying to advocate at the county board level is, let's figure out what that responsible level is, you know? If the state says 3, but a lot of my other county board members think that that's not enough, I think 9.5 months is too much. At 4 million a month, if we met in the middle and said 5 or 6 months is an adequate reserve, we'd land on that 20 to 24 million dollar mark. We potentially have 10 to 15 million dollars in reserves that we could use for a capital campaign of some type, building roads. We don't need to build buildings. We went through a major building program in the 90s and early into the aughts. And those buildings are now starting to pay the mortgage off on those. We've been buying them down and getting the interest rates down lower and making
Good.
sure that we're
Good time
refinancing
to
at
do
the right
that.
time.
Good time to do that.
So you have those reserves sitting there. We need some roads done. It's also nice to have that little cushion so that, like last year, we came back and we said, well, we could go out and levy the people. We need between 1.5% and 2.5% increase in levy to balance our budget. So you've been beating on me tonight saying that we used our reserves to balance our budget, but my point is, what's laying in those reserves is their money.
Well,
it came out of their pocket.
Yeah.
And we as administrators and policymakers opted to save it for a rainy day as opposed to balance the budget or balance that levy. So I sat on the budget committee last year and I said, you know what, let's give them a break. Let's use some of our reserves. It's against, by the way, it's against Government 101. You don't use reserves for operating. But again, my point to the rest of the county board was, we tax the people for operating levy. Why can't we do that on and last year was the reason that budget hit. Our economy was tough, Lou.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
the housing industry was down, the construction industry was
The
down. all those
interest on that 40 million was lousy,
Right,
because you ain't getting much interest on
right,
things.
so, you know.
Your incomes are poor because businesses aren't making money.
Yeah.
And people are not growing and investing.
We did have board consensus to use those reserves to balance our budget last year. I'm not saying we're gonna do that every year.
Well,
but at the same time,
having a plan to get back to balance and using it, if it's only that kind of money out of it, seems pretty reasonable to me.
Yep.
I'm sure you guys will arrive at the right answer, but it is a tough problem.
right, and in addition to those reserves,
But it's a great problem to have.
it is.
It's much better than saying, we got a $40 million hole in our budget.
And we're gonna
What are
have
we
to,
do about
and we're gonna
that?"
have to whack the levy by 17% or 20%, and if you look around, some counties ran into some of those kind of problems. So, we're hoping we can leverage a responsible buy down of those reserves, along with a really favorable bond market that's out there right now, because the bond interest rates are fantastic.
Yes.
So we could do a really smart balance of those reserve buy down, use down, spend
Yes.
down.
Yes.
A little bit of bonding, and we could get some really good road projects going and really fix up the main feeders that serve our county and really fix things up and not have to go back to taxpayers and say, look at everything I'm doing, I'm building new roads and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. But at the end of the year, when you get your tax statement, it went up 18% or 12% or 8%. So the county board has held that line on the tax levy with a
Yes, they
growth,
have.
with a growth that's comparable to and or reasonable
And-
with the inflation rate and our cost of living increase. So it's,
Not only that,
I think it's
Jim,
pretty responsible.
I want to back up and repeat what you just said, and that is that the 12 and the 13, the budgets do not increase the county property tax obligation.
Right.
And I think that's pretty remarkable. And I think, I shouldn't have said remarkable, I think that's laudable. I think you guys should be congratulated on behalf of taxpayers for that. Another thing is spending. Again, I pull out of the budget. Here's a rack up of Beltrami County against, 6 or 8 counties, and our per capita spending is very nicely in line and on the low end of this curve. So spending seems to be under control. On a percentage wise, we're almost in balance, and personally, I think using the reserves, no matter what you do with the rest of them, Jim, using them to get you back to balance seems pretty reasonable.
And if I was you folks out there, I'd be listening to him because he read the budget and I don't think all the rest of the county commissioners
I spent, so you talk about the numbers. See, I spent so much time with business managers and their numbers that,
Well, and I
That's what
joke
I do.
because I have read the budget.
I'm sure
We've
you
looked
have.
through it. The Beltrami County has actually won, I don't know if was it
An
last
award.
year?
Yeah.
They won an award
I didn't
for
write that award down. I meant
budget
to.
presentation
Yes.
and clarity in the budget.
Yes.
Not that we're doing the numbers, or any of that, but just in the presentation of the budget and the assembly of the budget. It is pretty clear, and if you look through it, you can skip by some of the heavy wordage pages, and you can get a good feel for how a $60 million company, Beltrami County, has to run in order to stay afloat.
That's right, Jim, and I encourage you to look at it, and I will again, for anyone who just joined us. We're talking about, if you go online and just go Beltrami County budget, you'll run into a 200-page document, but don't let that scare you, because as Jim said, click through it and read it like a magazine.
Right.
And so the parts that aren't interesting, don't read them. But what you'll find is that every function, and gosh, there's a whole list of functions in this corporation, every one of them talks about what their strategic initiatives are, how they're going to measure them, what they're trying to accomplish on our behalf. It's pretty fascinating stuff. And so when you talk about mystery in county government, well, it's revealed right in their own documents. It's a wonderful document.
Yeah, and it has to be. I mean, we have to be as transparent as we can, and we need to do this for our auditors and for state statutes, and everybody can see it. It is out there. You can take a look at it, and Lou pulled it right up for this purposes of this interview. Pulled it up so that we had something to talk about, and we had some good
Plenty in
information.
there. We can talk about this for a week. You know, Jim, it was interesting to me. Let's talk about some of the aspects of our county, because one thing you'll see in there is a 2-page table that gives measures of our county in various ways and contrasts it to the state so you can compare it. We suffer, Jim, in that only a very small percentage of our county is taxable.
25% of the land area is part of the levy. So compared to some neighboring counties, we have, another neighboring county has twice as much taxable property and 3 times the tax base. So it's, you look at those numbers, and again, I don't like to just throw out numbers because it just, the big picture is we have such a small area and everybody's gonna say, well, what's the other 75%? It's public land. It's state forest, it's county land, it's all public land. So
And we like that, but we are gonna have to pay for it in some ways.
right, and then that brings in a really strange little concept called PILT, payment in lieu of taxes.
Okay.
And what that
You're gonna
means,
have to
in
bring us all
a
over that.
nutshell, what that, last year, Beltrami County got $2 million out of the big state tax coffer. They paid us $2 million payment in lieu of taxes because we have so much public land. And I simplify it, and of course I'll take my hits with all the folks, but the way I simplify it is that we're the playground. So when the folks down south that have 75% of their property is taxable and 25% is playground, they don't have enough land to play on, so where do they go? They drive up through the counties, they drive through Beltrami County and head for Lake of the Woods. They come to Beltrami County and go to all of our lakes and all of our resorts. So they're running over our roads, so they should help in paying for those taxes. So PILT, payment in lieu of taxes, that $2 million, we use that almost exclusively every year for roads. And we put that into our road pot to repair county roads, fix them up, keep them working so that people can continue to get here and get to the resorts and get to the recreation opportunities that we have here and get to the state parks and the national, up all the way to the northern part of the state. So PILT is a very, took me 3-4 years to really figure out how that really works, why it's there, where it comes from. But it's a very important piece. In Beltrami County, because of that offset of 25%, 75%, we're one of the higher reimbursed counties in the state for payment in lieu of taxes, or you'll hear it referred to as PILT many times.
Well, let's hope that keeps coming.
Right, and that's some of the things that the other county board members say, you know, we're a little skeptical that they might cut PILT out on us. That means we're gonna have to come up with $2 million that we kinda always earmark towards fixing our roads and keeping those things up. So that's why the reserves and that's why the discussion about all of that we don't know what they're gonna do to us. But, you know, you can only deal with what you have control over. You can't deal with the snow outside and you can't deal with the fact that there's 30 inches of ice on Lake Bemidji. You can't deal with that. There's no control, you can't do anything about it.
Right.
You gotta deal with the things.
When it snows, if you're gonna go somewhere, you're gonna have to plow it.
Right.
It's just
So
the
you
way
gotta
it is.
deal with the things that you can deal with, and you can't deal with those unknowns.
You know, I'm sorry, Jim, but I went off on a complete flyer here talking about that and thinking that, you know, we have all this wonderful state land and land up here to use and enjoy. I guess this thing where they got a new czar down in St. Paul to manage all the state lands, it kind of worries me. You know, I'm working, and we have Mayana Rice here, talking about the comprehensive plan for the townships and the city, and we're looking out 30 years as our city goes around the lake. I want that township block as a city park, hopefully in my lifetime. It belongs to the state. I'd hate to have some czar down in St. Paul clear cut it for some revenues when we're going to turn it into a tall tree park. So if you hear about anything like that, please marshal us, because, you know, where all of these state lands now, St. Paul could do just about anything with them.
They can, but you know, there again, that's what we try to do, is advocate to the state. Just like I was talking about earlier, counties, we tend to stay away from the township government. You deal with your county, your township road. You know your citizens, you know who needs plowing in, you know who needs to get plowed out, you know all of that. You take care of your township. County says to the city, you take care of your city, you know, we're around you, county's all around you. You take care of your city, Black Duck, Bemidji, Red Lake, Redby, Kellier, Washkish, all our cities in our county. You take care of your cities. We're around you. We'll get the roads up to you, you know, but you're gonna levy your city people and you're gonna fix the road from where we stop and you take it into your city. We'd like the same politeness from the state and federal level to say, well, we don't know how to run Beltrami County. We don't know the issues. We wanna just say, you know, take care of your county. We'll run our state highways by you or up to you or through you, and you take care of it through your county, and we'll help you with state aid, but we're not gonna tell you what to do. And hopefully, you know, we can advocate as citizens and constituents to say, we know what is best for where we live. So
Well,
don't,
please
we
keep
don't,
an eye on that though, because
Yeah.
there's a guy down in St. Paul with the objective to maximize revenues off of state-owned land, and something like that just personally worries me.
Well, and
We
it worries-
can't solve it tonight.
it worries us because we're sitting in a county that
That's
has
what I mean.
75% of
We
the
have
county
all
is a
this,
lot of
enjoy
public
it.
land.
Yes.
Yeah.
Back to the budget. This is something that might be of interest. It was certainly of interest to me, and I was down on the expenditures. By the way, Jim, when I first looked at what it costs us to run the government, the way that was done in the budget, it said, okay, you know, here's what it costs us to run the government, and it had a little paragraph, and I said, wow. But then what I realized was that you've got to go down later, and each of the, it looked like it was totally unaccounted. But when you go down later, each of the functions you see have their own little accounting, and it's an add up.
Yes.
But when you read the budget, it doesn't say that.
Right.
It doesn't say this is an add up and you will see the detail, da, da, da. It just looked like no accounting, so I was a little, whoever wrote it, you just might look into that. It kind of shocked me until I understood it. But here's what I wanted to say, because we don't know this. Taking care of one another and those less fortunate than us is expensive.
Very.
32% of what the county government spends, you've mentioned roads once or twice tonight, and they're probably big, but bigger than that, 32% of the expenditures of the county are on human services and health.
Yep.
Taking care of us, and especially those of us who are unfortunate and need more care.
And can't take care of themselves
can't take
or
care of
need
themselves.
more care.
Need
Yep.
more care.
So that's roughly 17 million out of that $60 million budget. You know, again, breaking it down pretty simply is our actual county government, that 342 employees, total cost on that is about $22.5 million. Health and Human Services, $17 million. That brings you up to 42. Now you got, do the math, 18 million left of a $60 million budget to do a whole bunch of things.
Right.
We gotta,
Right.
we have to run our parks and zoning and planning. You have to, you know, the roads budget. The law enforcement is a huge piece of that. You know, law enforcement can be 6-7 million a year.
Yes.
You know,
And public safety, though,
which
is
falls into that whole
really
same category.
important.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I know you work with Greater Bemidji. I think you're on their board.
Yes.
Dave Hengel was here, and he made a very interesting point in that the reasons we live here and love Bemidji are exactly the same reasons why businesses consider moving here. And it's things like our clean air and the big trees and the clean water and the recreation and the open land, and it's safety. One of the first things that people become concerned about development is, well, am I going to lose those things?
Right.
Those things that are lack of congestion and safety and safe neighborhoods.
Yep.
So I just thought that was interesting. Well, Jim, before we slip away on time here, let's talk about anything that's, you know, like near and dear to your heart. I know, for example, that you've been a big advocate of the Veterans Home. Want to talk about that a little? How's that going?
Yeah, we've been working on that we started that task force, that initiative, right about when I started my first 4-year stint as a county commissioner. So that was 4 years ago. We're entering the 5th year. We have put together a plan, a 70-bed nursing home facility. It's a veterans home. It's going to be a place, not just a home for veterans, but it's a place for northern Minnesota, and it's termed Northern Minnesota Veterans Home. Sanford Health has donated a nearly $1 million piece of property adjacent to the hospital that would be right next to all of the care that's needed and for all of those folks. We've put the plan together. The legislature has run it through a couple of times. It's basically a $25 million undertaking to build the building, but that's not the major cost. The major cost is $7 to $10 million a year for 20 years to operate it. So the first thing you have to do
Sorry,
is
Jeff, $7 to $10 million a year
for
to
20
operate.
years, and you have to have that commitment from somebody,
Okay.
state legislature, that says, okay, we will appropriate
Yeah.
7 to 10 per year for
That's
20 years.
serious money.
Yeah. So first you come up with the land, we got that. Then you come up with the plan, we've put that together. We're trying to make our case that Bemidji should be the place. There are some other communities that feel they're as good a place as us. We're still trying to prove, and we feel we're better because there is nothing in northern Minnesota, and there's 30,000+ vets that have to drive right through Bemidji and head further south from here to get veterans care. So the land, the plan, 30% of the $25 million to build it, so we got to come up with about $8 million to build the facility in the first place. Then the feds throw in the other $17 million, and then you have to have the commitment of who is going to fund it and operate it for that 20-year period. And as soon as we can pull all that together, it's a long race. But we've been in it for 5 years. We've made our steps. We got that land commitment, and our charge these days is we just feel that we better take care of vets or quit making them.
That's hard to argue with.
So we need to do something. There's a need. We need to do that. So we're going to keep pushing on that. We have three of the 5 county commissioners actively on that task force. The other 2 are always there when we make decisions. The county board committed a very small amount of funds from some planning and development to put that plan together and to get a coordinator. We've been down to legislature a number of times and sat in the Veterans Affairs Committee hearings and testified. Joe Vinnie has been a great champion of that project. Richard Anderson has been down there too. Those are both fellow county commissioners. It's still going that way. A really big push was the land that we have near our hospital and that whole campus. That's a very strong point for our side.
Sounds like it would be.
We keep pushing and keep
Sounds like
trying
it
to
would
make
be.
that work.
But I see that that's somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 million commitment, though.
Yes.
So somebody's going to have to chew on that a little bit.
Yep. And we keep working with legislature to assist us and see how you can do that in the federal government. And so it's been a very interesting, an interesting undertaking.
Change subject then just a little. We talked last year about economic development, a subject that I'm interested in. Dave Hengel is here. I really liked his plan to work with the technical college for this. Hire you today, pay you while we train you, pay for your training, you got a job, you support your family, and this idea of stacking up credits, I can't wait to get see if it goes through, to get the technical college people in to talk about it some more. What do you think about economic development? A year's gone by. I know the county's involved. The county, there are other people, a number of businesses also support Greater Bemidji, I believe, and their funding comes from a number of sources, right?
Yep. Oh yeah, quite a number of private folks back the Greater Bemidji effort too. That's a huge discussion. It seems like government is getting more and more into economic development to try to stabilize job creation, try to initiate job creation. One of the big things we pushed on with our Veterans Home Initiative was such a positive flow that we have going in the Bemidji area for nursing. We have a
Yes.
program at the vocational
Yes,
college, we have a
yes.
program at
Very strong
BSU.
program.
We have
And,
a
yes.
huge program.
Yes.
And can you imagine what a veterans home, the opportunity that it would give for education, for training,
Absolutely.
and not to mention the, you know, the hands-on care with vets right here, and we could bring young folks in.
And it keeps our children here. They don't have to go down to the cities to get a job because, you know, it's this circular problem of you don't have a job, so you have to leave. But if there's no training, then you don't. You
Right.
know what I mean? There's a training job equation, and that's what I liked about this initiative. In that it seems to match up jobs with training, and we need more of that.
Yep. And private developers, they're just, especially in rural America, I just don't think there's the horsepower there to be able to pull that off. You know, it's hard to get a private individual to jump into an incubator space to do high-tech job training and high-tech job stimulation. How do you make money on that? You know, it almost gets to a point where that is government's role to try to make economic development. How do you create jobs and how do you do that? You have to partner with private development, and that's what Greater Bemidji's doing.
Right.
Is partnering with Team Electronics and partnering with a number of other folks in the area to give them that nudge and give them that help, that assistance on the front end to get that training opportunity going.
That's great, Jim. I'm glad to hear you say that because I had the impression last year that you had a pretty hard line on government getting involved. But I think you just said that the key point is that there's some things that the private people just can't quite justify doing. And you're also made a great point. You know, Dave talked about a group that moved here with all of their like backroom accounting and because of the strong accounting program here at
Right.
BSU. So if we are having
That was
nurses,
Ameripride.
yes.
Yeah.
So now we're training nurses, we're training engineering
Accountants.
type accountants. So if government can in some way assist us to get the jobs for the accountants and more accountants for the jobs, then I say more power to them.
Right. It's called encourage, rather than take it over.
Right.
What you need government to do is encourage that development, because when you encourage Team Electronics and you encourage that nursing aspect, it starts to work, and it starts to even turn somebody like me who is I'm not a big fan of big government, and I'd like to see government stay out of my business a little more than what they do.
Do the right thing.
Yeah, so.
And don't do a lot more.
Yeah, we don't need to do more. We almost all agree that we don't need government to do more for us. We got to find out the right things that government's good at doing for us. We need to split things into necessary services and luxury services. And we really need to look at
That's a good
essential services versus things that are nice to have. And I think sometimes government gets that confused. I would really like to make sure that when we look at budgets and we look at numbers, what are we taking care of folks that are developmentally disabled and taking away their eyeglass prescriptions because we're saving a buck in that department? We're taking away their feet treatments and their chiropractic care, the things that they really need, because we're doing that to justify cutting expenses or saving a budget. I don't agree with that. We need to find essential services, non-essential services. The non-essential services need to come after you've taken care of your essential services. You need to take care of those folks that can't take care of themselves and need that help.
I think that was really well said, Jim, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope you guys did as well. Every time Jim's here, we can talk for 2 hours, but unfortunately, Upstream told me we can't. So we're gonna have to sign off. I'm gonna do a little sign off, Jim, and then let you have whatever kind of a final word. So thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Lou Crenshaw. We have this show Inside Bemidji, we call it, every Wednesday night at 6:30. It's brought to you here thanks to Upstream TV. We try to showcase people and organizations who are working to make our community an even better place. Been talking about county government and all of the wide variety of things that they're involved in. I really like what Jim just said about what's essential, what's not essential, and I trust our commissioners to take care of that. But for right now, I think for the costs, we're getting a lot from our county government, and I'm certainly, as a taxpayer, really pleased. So Jim, final word.
I encourage you to come out. Our county board meetings, it may sound boring, but the county board meetings are very brief. We do a 2-hour work session prior to the county board meeting from 3 to 5, which is open to the public. And then we prep for the meeting from 5 o'clock, and they're normally done by 6 or 6:30. So it's not a long knockdown drag out. We get very few people there. I'd really like you to come out, get involved, try to find out what's happening and where your tax money goes. And in the meantime, I'll take as good a care of it as I can, and I'll do what I can to spend it wisely, make sure we got roads and tall trees and good water and essential services. That's what it comes down to.
Jim, thanks for coming. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Lou.
And thanks for joining us, and good night. We'll see you next week.